Next witness. Here we go.
Could you please state your name and spell it for the benefit of the court reporter?
First name is Heather, Heather. Last name is Williams, Williams.
And where are you employed?
The Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, located in Milwaukee.
And what is your current position at the crime laboratory in Milwaukee?
I am a firearms and toolmark examiner.
And how long have you been employed with the Wisconsin State Crime Lab as a firearms toolmark examiner?
A little over 5.5 years.
And what does that mean to be a firearms or toolmark examiner?
As a firearms and toolmark examiner, I conduct examinations of firearms and firearms-related evidence, such as fired cartridge cases and fired bullets.
And is there any specialized education or training that you have done pertaining to your job as a firearms or toolmark examiner?
Yes, I first hold a Bachelor's of Science degree in Law Enforcement Administration with a minor in Forensic Science. That included a 525-hour internship at the DuPage County Forensic Science Center. I also completed the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory Firearms and Toolmark Examiner Training Program. It's an apprentice-type training program, much like an electrician or a plumber, where you get both hands-on and classroom-like instruction.
And what exactly is firearms identification?
Firearms identification is the comparison analysis of fired evidence, compares bullets to barrels and cartridge cases to firearms.
And what process is used when examining a firearm that is submitted to your section?
One of the first tasks that we perform when a firearm is submitted to the firearm section is called a function test. The purpose of the function test is to first make sure that the firearm is a functional firearm and that it's also safe to test fire. During that function test, I'll check the condition of the firearm along with all safeties that are associated with that firearm.
And then what do you do next with when examining that firearm?
Once I've determined that that firearm is safe to test fire, I will test fire the firearm. This is done to make sure that the firearm is working properly in the way that the manufacturer intended for it to work, and also instances in which we have fired evidence. Those test-fired bullets and cartridge cases that are produced are then compared to that fired evidence to see if they were or were not fired in the submitted firearm.
And did you become involved in a case in your professional capacity regarding Kyle Rittenhouse, Joseph Rosenbaum, and Anthony Huber?
Yes, I was.
And how did you become involved with that case?
I was assigned to work that laboratory case.
I bet you what is previously marked and admitted as State's Exhibit 28. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. I recognize that as the firearm that I analyzed for this specific case. How I recognize that is on the firearm in silver marker. I have indicated that laboratory case number associated with the case, the item designation of that item, my initials, and the date that that was examined.
So is it my understanding that you would have actually examined this exact firearm and fired it?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I think that's good. Thank you. So what do you use to test fire it with?
We're going to use ammunition that is part of our reference collection. When we choose the ammunition for our test fires, we try to choose it as close to the fired evidence that's submitted to that case.
What is a cartridge?
A cartridge is unfired ammunition that's going to consist of 4 components. You'll have the actual cartridge case, you'll have the primer, you'll have the propellant or gunpowder, and then you'll have the projectile or bullet.
So what is a cartridge case?
A cartridge case is a portion of a fired cartridge that is left over after it's been fired in a firearm. You may have commonly heard it referred to as brass.
And how do you determine if cartridge cases were fired in the same firearm?
You're going to look at markings that are transferred onto the fired cartridge cases during the firing process. Those are the markings that we look at to determine if they were or were not fired in the same firearm. And then instances when we have a firearm, we're able to determine if they were or were not fired in a specific
I had to see her in regular time because I was like, wow, man, but I forgot I was at 1.5.
firearm.
So what's the difference between a cartridge and a bullet?
A cartridge, like I said, is going to be the full unfired ammunition, so it's going to be those 4 components. A bullet is just one of those 4 components, so it's the projectile portion that you'll see on an unfired cartridge.
So what is a fired bullet?
A fired bullet is going to be the bullet that is expelled through the barrel of a firearm. It's going to have impressions that are going to be left on that from the rifling or that spiral pattern that's going to be within that bore of the barrel.
So how can you determine if bullets were fired in the same firearm?
You're going to look at those rifling impressions that are left on a fired bullet from the barrel that it's been fired through.
Is your crime lab accredited?
Yes, we are.
And who accredits your crime lab?
We are accredited through ANAB, ANAB. It stands for the American National Association Standards National Accreditation Board.
And are there any quality controls or procedures that are used, particularly in your discipline at your crime lab?
Yes, in the firearms section, we have a 3-step quality control procedure. The first step is called the verification process. This is when any type of identification, elimination, or inconclusive results of fired evidence is then looked at by a second qualified examiner in the section.
So far, I think this is the prosecution's best witness. Pretty thorough, pretty explanatory, says what she's supposed to do, explains to the jury well, answers like she knows what she's talking about, then it's probably their best witness.
Once that verification process has been completed, there is then a peer review process in which all notes and reports are looked at to make sure everything's clear, complete, and accurate. That last step is going to be administrative review. That is going to be when a supervisor will once again go through all reports and notes to make sure everything is clear, complete, and accurate before the report is submitted to the submitting agency.
I'll let you guys mark the States Exhibit 72. Do you recognize that?
I do. This is the report that I issued for this specific case. I know that based upon the laboratory case number, as well as it has my name as well as my signature, and then it also has information on the second page with my initials showing that I did complete both of these pages of the report.
And is that a true and accurate copy of the report that you issued in this case?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to Exhibit 72 into evidence.
How do you know? You didn't even look at it.
States Exhibit 71. Can you please explain what this is?
This is one of the fired cartridge cases that I analyzed for this specific case. I can tell that based upon the laboratory sticker, the yellow sticker here. This has the laboratory case number associated with this case, the item designation, as well as my initials and date that I took this into my custody. I also have that information on the additional packaging for this specific item, and then we also have that information on the actual cartridge case itself.
So which was the bullet that was fired allegedly by the defendant? Where would that be in that packet?
This is just going to contain one of the fired cartridge cases. So this is a portion of a cartridge that was fired. So this is a portion that is ejected from the firearm.
So that the thing in the top of that threefold, that is what was presented to you as an already fired cartridge. That's not one that you fired.
Correct, yes. This is a piece of submitted evidence for this specific case.
So what kind of, is that a true and accurate copy of how you would have packaged up that particular cartridge casing and all the other elements in Exhibit 71?
Yes, I know that this is how I packaged this piece of evidence because at each one of the heat sealed seals, it's going to have my initials as well as the date that I actually sealed this piece of evidence.
I'd like to move Exhibit 71 into evidence. So after you test fire the weapon, the gun that we saw, then what happens next in your analysis?
So what I will do then is I will compare those test fired cartridge cases to the fired evidence cartridge cases for this specific case. I do that by using what is called a comparison microscope. These are two microscopes that are then connected by an optical bridge. It allows myself as an examiner to look at two objects simultaneously side by side. That way I'm able to see the markings that are transferred from the firearm during that firing process on the cartridge cases to look to see if the submitted evidence was or was not fired in the submitted firearm.
So what did you do in this particular case?
In this particular case, there were 8 fired cartridge cases that were submitted. Each one of those 8 fired cartridge cases were then compared to the test fire cartridge cases that I produced so that I could be able to determine if they were or were not fired in the submitted firearm.
So you were submitted 8.
Well, this was a tough case to figure out. You had 8 .223s fired on video, and you were able to match them. Woo! That's the government.
Of the, if you hold up Exhibit 71 briefly, you were given 8 of those cartridges on top?
Yes, it's the 8 fired cartridge cases, just like this one here, was submitted for this specific case and analyzed.
And did you find that all 8 of those cartridges were fired through the weapon that Detective Antaramian showed you?
Yes, I was able to determine that the 8 fired cartridge cases submitted in this case was fired in the submitted firearm.
And that was by comparing each one to the test fired projectiles that you fired?
Correct, yes.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Why don't you just stipulate to that?
Well, thank you.
You may step down.
I was about to say, there's no really reason to question her. I mean, unless you think she screwed it up or she's making it up. I mean, what? This is a really kind of formal to get the evidence in on how it was done, press the jury that the government did one thing right out of the whole freaking case.
Stand call Officer Jason Krieger to the stand.
Jason Krieger. Oh, he's a police officer. You got a little badge or a big badge? Let's see his little badgie. Oh, I think he got a little baby badge. Oh, ain't that cute? So let's look at his equipment here. We have 2 pens. What else we got here? Radio.
Sir, can you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Jason Krieger. It's JasonKrueger.
And how are you employed?
With the City of Kenosha Police Department.
How long have you been on the City of Kenosha Police Department?
Approximately 2 years and 11 months.
And were you working on August 25th, 2020?
I was.
And were you working with an Officer Pat Moretti on that date?
Yes.
Had you been working in the previous days during the civil unrest that was occurring in Kenosha?
Yes.
Civil unrest. The other officer described it as a freaking war zone when he pepper sprayed Kyle for walking up to him with his hands up. Now it's a civil unrest.
And on August 25th, what was your assignment, your general assignment with your partner, Officer Moretti?
So on that date and time, we were assigned to...
Officer Moretti? Isn't that the female officer on Longmire?
The second shift
Vic
patrol, we
Moretti?
were patrolling the downtown area, as well as handling calls that popped out throughout the city. Anything in progress.
So is it fair to say you were focused downtown, but if there was a reason to go to another part of the city for a domestic violence or a burglary, you would still respond to that call?
Yes.
Is that different than how let's say the night before was in your duties?
I believe that throughout most of the time that was kind of the same. We were heading to in-progress calls, focusing on the downtown area to handle any incidents that arise.
Now, on the night of August,
This guy's pretty nervous. He's probably only testified maybe once. If he's only been on 3 years, you don't go to a lot of jury trials. So this guy's pretty young, and this may be his first jury trial. It wouldn't surprise me. So he's going to be a little nervous.
25th, at any point were you ever asked to respond to a potential shooting?
Damn, dude, you're here for a freaking... You don't remember whether you were... What the fuck? That pause was way too long. I got to go back.
Respond to a potential shooting.
I do recall.
That was on time and a half pause. Dude, how long did you... Let me go back to regular... Man, I can't believe how long this pause is. This is killing me. Hang on, I got to go back.
To a potential shooting.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I do recall going to a shooting. We were just right in the area. I'm not 100% sure if we were dispatched to that call or not.
You're killing me, dude. That's all right. Hey, he's young. He's fake. Come on, man. Don't be too hard on him. Come on. Here we go.
So, but at some point you and Officer Moretti went in the direction of some shots?
Yes.
And do you recall how you went about going to that location?
Yes, so we were in the area of 60th Street and between the 12 and 1300 block on a other call. I believe it was a fire. I heard the gunshots coming just southeast of us. I looked at Officer Moretti, and we decided at that point we were going to head to that since it seemed in progress.
Now, in your training, what are you trained to do if there is, let's say, a potential active shooter situation?
Our number one focus is to stop the killing or to make the scene secure, eliminate any active threats.
So with that in mind, what, if anything, did you do?
When we approached the scene, we had approached slowly just to try to attempt to gain any visual information that we could see. We had just been with a few other squads, other armored vehicles in the area, so we were assuming they were behind us. And we approached the scene very slowly to determine if we could at least get a visual on the any threats that we could
So you weren't in a hurry to save lives. Is that what you're saying?
see. We were hearing gunshots. We just couldn't see where they're coming from at that point.
Did anyone approach your vehicle?
Yes.
Who approached your vehicle?
There was a younger male. He was dressed in a T-shirt and I believe cargo shorts, and he was carrying an AR-15 style assault rifle, and he had his hands raised, and I believe he was carrying a medic bag as well.
Cargo shorts? Was Kyle wearing cargo shorts?
Did you hear anything that the crowd was shouting in relation to this individual?
I did not hear any specific phrases. There was just a lot of noise, a lot of background noise, and in my mind I was more focused on hearing the gunshots and trying to figure out where they were coming from. I didn't necessarily hear any specific words the crowd was shouting toward me.
Do you, at one point, I'm going to represent you. There's a video that shows you getting out of the squad car and running to the trunk. Do you have any idea why you did that?
A lot of my equipment I use on duty is stored in the trunk. Gas masks, vests, things like that. If I would have retrieved something from the trunk, it would have been to keep me safe on the scene if there was an active shooter. I do not recall the exact item.
By vest, do you mean like a bulletproof vest?
Yes.
Were you already wearing a bulletproof vest?
I do not recall what vest I was wearing, but I had my steel plate carrier with me. The vest I'm currently wearing right now is not able to prevent a rifle round going through, but the steel plate carrier that I had at that time would have been able to stop anything up to a round coming from a rifle.
So the vest you're wearing now, is that sort of the standard everyday vest that you would wear?
Yes.
And a bullet fired from an AR-15 like the one the defendant had, your vest would not stop it at all?
It's not rated for it. I've never attempted to do it, but I do not believe it would.
And how about
That was a good answer.
your squad car? Is your squad car armed in any way that would prevent rifle rounds from penetrating it?
To my knowledge, no.
So what do you do as this person is approaching you on the street?
As I watched him approach, I was giving him verbal commands to keep away from my squad. I did not want anybody coming up directly to my squad that could be a potential threat. So we were giving him verbal commands just to stay back. I had also grabbed my pepper spray out of my vest and was going to use it if the individual continued to approach the car.
So you're the one that pepper sprayed because you were in fear of your life. Even though your partner testified that this is the most people he's seen with guns ever. There were more people with guns than without guns. Y'all had been engaging people with guns all night. And then he said the area was a war zone. That was your partner.
Why did you see him as a threat?
I never met him before. He had a rifle. Given the situation at hand, there's a lot of circumstances where I just did not want some individual coming up to my squad car in that scene with there's gunshots still going off that I didn't necessarily know.
So most people that want to shoot you come up to you with their hands up. Is that normal to say? In your 3 years as a police officer, how many people walked up to you with their hands up and been a threat?
You said his hands were up, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Did you feel like he was surrendering to you?
No.
Why not?
If he says most people surrender by kneeling down and laying down, I know they were coached, because that is such bullshit.
Throughout the past few days, we've come across a lot of individuals who are armed, and the first thing they do is put their hands up to signal that they don't mean any threat to us. It doesn't mean that they were surrendering. It just means that they just wanted us to see their hands. Hands are the most, they typically indicate if a threat is going to be present. So if we can see their hands, we generally know there's no threat there.
That's a good answer. That's a much more honest answer than his partner.
So you indicated that you grabbed your OC spray, your pepper spray. What happened next?
The individual approaching our car was not responding to my verbal commands. So I checked the OC can, made sure it was able to discharge the spray, and I pointed at the individual, and I discharged a string of OC spray towards direction when he would not listen to.
So you used force on a guy that you weren't going to arrest and was where a place he was lawfully to be, and he was walking up to you with his hands up, and you pepper sprayed him. But Rick, police are our friends, and they want to... Okay, whatever.
My commands.
At that point, how close was he to your... And you were in the passenger side?
Yes.
At that point, how close was he to your passenger side door?
I believe he was within about 5 feet.
Do you know if the spray hit him or not?
I do not recall.
Did the spray have the desired effect of him getting away from the vehicle?
Yes, he ended up walking away from me.
So once he left the area of your vehicle, what happened next?
I began to see other squad cars and armored vehicles coming to the area. I believe I took up a position on the east side of the road towards the parking lot and just kind of held it there to attempt to gain eyes as more officers came on scene. Throughout that time, I just tried securing the scene as best as possible, trying to gather as much information as possible about where the shots were coming from, who was firing them, and who the suspect was.
What, if anything, happened next?
We were approached by one of the mutual aid tactical teams who informed us that they had an individual with a gunshot wound to the arm. I believe that individual was Mr. Groskowitz, and they did not know how to access the hospital. Since I was familiar with the area, Officer Moretti and I got into our squad car, and we escorted that tactical vehicle to the east side of the Freighter South Hospital and got Mr. Groskowitz into the ER.
Now, the tactical vehicle you mentioned, is that what some people commonly refer to as like a Bearcat or an MRAP or something like that?
Yes.
So then you accompanied that to the hospital, and it contained Mr. Grosskreutz, who had been injured.
Yes.
Now, at the hospital, what happened? What did you observe?
So we got him in the hospital. I believe he went back to the ER. I said
This guy's pause is killing me.
in the lobby, I was approached by another individual, Richard McGinnis, who kind of talked to me about that. He gave me information that he believed that he had the suspect on video just prior to the shooting. So I talked to him briefly, obtained the cell phone, and obtained the individual's ID card.
And then did you have him get interviewed by someone at the in your department?
Yes, I passed all that information along to the detective bureau, I believe it was Sergeant DeWitt.
Now, at the hospital, when you were there with Officer Moretti, did you have any interaction with Joseph Rosenbaum, who at that point had deceased?
I believe that I helped Officer Moretti process and collect the evidence from one of the deceased. I do not recall which victim it was.
No further questions. Thank you.
It's kind of a do-nothing witness. Well, basically, pepper sprayed him. I'm not sure I'd question him.
Good afternoon.
So I don't have a whole lot of questions for you, but so if I could, and we've heard Officer Moretti testify. Okay, so do you hear what you believe to be rifle rounds around 11:50 or so on the 25th?
I heard gunshot rounds. I could not tell if they were handgun or rifle rounds.
Okay, so the type of firearm that had been discharged at that point, it was difficult for you to make out.
Yes.
But you knew that there had been a discharge of firearms. You heard that much.
Yes.
So, do you recall seeing a person that you now know to be Mr. Rittenhouse walking toward your squad car?
Yes.
Okay. And to be fair, he has his hands like this, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that you said that. Tell me if I'm right. Throughout that evening, people maybe who had firearms, when they saw you, they put their hands up, so you knew that they weren't a threat to you.
Yes.
This is also, to be fair, a way that someone could surrender.
Yes, it could.
Okay. And again, don't take this as being critical. I'm not trying to be that way. But as he's walking toward you, he doesn't have at that point his hands on his gun, but he's just walking toward your vehicle, right?
Yes.
And I understand your concern, but as he's getting closer to you, after knowing that shots had just been fired, I know there's a lot going on, but were you interested in finding out if he had any information?
No.
I wasn't.
Okay. And
What did he say?
if he had any information?
I wasn't.
Okay. And
You were? Is that how you get information? You pepper spray somebody? What the? How can you say you were interested in whether he had information?
And when he starts coming to the side, he's coming to your side, right?
Yes.
Do you hear him like say anything to you?
The only thing I can remember him saying was something about a shooting. There was no other verbal indication from him coming directly saying it was me. It was just something about a shooting.
Okay. And you had just heard shots fired.
Yes.
This person's walking to you with his hands up and says something about a shooting, right?
And you
I mean, his
pepper
exact words
spray
were
him.
not something about a shooting,
No, no.
but
He says something. Included in that something is the word shooting.
yes.
And so I understand that we've seen the video. You pull out your OC spray, and after giving him a command, you spray him with the spray, right?
Yes.
Do you see Mr. McGinnis? You had mentioned that you see Mr. McGinnis at the hospital. He shows you the video.
Yes.
Do you say to yourself, "That's the guy that's walking with his hands up that I just saw"?
I did recognize the individual from the video, and
He's grinning because he's like, yeah, I feel pretty stupid now.
into my mind, I believe he looked familiar.
Okay. And again, so do you tell anybody at that point, like, look, I'm putting these together. The guy that has his hands up, that's the guy we're probably looking for.
Yes.
Okay.
I would ask him, in your mind, looking back now, do you think he was trying to surrender? Because that would be key, because they kept saying he's not surrendering. We didn't know he was surrendering. A lot of people did this. I would get him to say, or want him to say, I think, looking back now after seeing a video, he was trying to surrender.
Oh, I do have two other questions. As he's walking up to you, do you ever ask him, and I understand it's a chaotic situation, do you ever ask him for identification?
No.
Do you ever ask him or do anything with the fact that he's possessing an AR-15?
No.
Now I have another question. Thank you, sir.
Were there other people, not necessarily in front of your vehicle, but around the area, in addition to Mr. Rittenhouse?
I do not recall.
Next question. How many people did you pepper spray that night for just walking up to you? I'm just wondering. How many people walked up to you, and how many did you pepper spray?
Were other people trying to give you information regarding a shooting or a potential shooter or anything like that?
There was a lot of voices shouting. Nobody directly came up to my squad car window like Mr. Rittenhouse did, but there was people after he had left the side of my squad car as I got out of the squad who did give me information about potential suspects as well.
Now, when you and Officer Murray are trying to get down to the scene of the active shooter, what is your primary goal?
Stop the killing, stop any threat.
Is that consistent with getting identification and speaking to an individual approaching your vehicle?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought he was going to go back at him again.
The state calls Kristen Harris to the stand.
Christian Harris.
Do you swear to testimony
Uh-oh.
you give this matter to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Yeah, my name's Kristan Harris, Kristan, last name Harris, Harris.
How are you currently employed?
Basically, I've been furloughed, but I've been pursuing my passions, obviously doing the Rundown Live, which is a reporter, and I do talk radio.
Can you tell us what the Rundown Live is?
It's an independent news and media. We try to bring all viewpoints, have civil conversations, sometimes about difficult content, as well as we cover protests of all varieties, of all political viewpoints as well.
Is there a large group of people that produce the Rundown Live, or are you kind of the main person?
There's several people that are involved there. It's a group of citizen journalists. We We quite often post stuff from other independent news sites. We try to report news before the mainstream media does, so we can give a very raw version.
What is your educational background?
I finished high school, but education really didn't become important to me until my later years. So, most of my research I've done through my own reading of books and information.
Do you have any formal journalistic training?
That I do not.
And do you operate out of the Milwaukee area?
That is correct.
How long have you been involved with the Rundown Live?
I've been doing reporting for about 12 years.
When you say reporting, is that all the Rundown Live or other stuff?
I also contributed to one of the top police accountability websites as a writer, known as Cop Block, which has been around for a long time.
What is that called?
Cop Block.
Cop Block?
Yes, .org was the website.
And when you say you
Whoa, just plugged a website on TV.
contribute to them, does that mean you're like a reporter for them?
I used to write for them, though. It's a defunct organization that was banned amongst a lot of other websites.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you first get involved in the Rundown Live?
It's probably around 2011.
Did you form it or did someone else?
Someone else formed it.
And then you joined it?
Yes, that is correct. And that person is no longer involved.
Do you have any sort of title with that organization?
I believe I'm the editor.
And you said you've covered a lot of protests. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Since about 2013, I probably covered over 100, 150 protests. I don't know the exact number.
What types of protests would they be?
Everything from something basic as Second Amendment rights and healthcare workers, against mandates, to BLM, Minneapolis, the burning down of the 3rd Precinct, D.C., obviously January 6th, as well as Kenosha and probably countless BLM protests.
There were some things there that I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You said the burning of the 3rd
Burning down the 3rd
district.
Precinct of Minneapolis, yes.
Okay.
That was the date. I don't know the date. That's how I recognize it.
That was one of the things that happened after George Floyd was killed?
That is correct.
And you... Sorry, Karen, do we need to slow down?
Sure.
Whatever she says, so we got to make sure. You also mentioned January 6th. Is that with regard to what happened at the United States Capitol on January 6th of this year?
That is correct.
Were you there for that?
I was.
Okay. And were you covering that for the Rundown Live?
That is correct.
You mentioned Kenosha. Were you here in Kenosha for the events that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake?
I was on scene within an hour or two of the shooting of Jacob Blake.
Were you then, help the jury to understand, when you talk about the Rundown Live, we're familiar with a lot of different types of media, newspapers, magazines, the internet, things like that. Can you help us understand exactly what you mean when you say you cover these things?
Yeah, I'm a citizen journalist, so I generally go to these events and I stream a lot of the times. I interview people to try to get natural conversations and have civil conversations so people can understand, in my viewpoint, what people really are saying before there might be some propaganda added. So essentially, it's the most raw form of journalism. I stream a lot of the times. I interview people to try to get natural conversations and have civil conversations so people can understand, in my viewpoint, what people really are saying before there might be some propaganda added. So essentially, it's the most raw form of journalism.
So when you came down within an hour or thereabouts after Jacob Blake, were you interviewing and speaking to people?
Yes.
Do you record that in any way?
Yes, I do. Well, I stream it. It's recorded on the cloud.
Okay. So is it fair to say that when you are covering any sort of event for the Rundown Live, you have a camera that is taking video of the things you see?
That is correct. I usually use my cell phone, which is a high-end device.
And then that video is live streamed to the internet on whatever site that you use so that people can watch it pretty much live. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay. So, for example, on the night Jacob Blake was shot on that Sunday night, August 23rd, you were here using your equipment to live stream the things that you were seeing.
That is correct.
Did you continue to do that on Monday night?
Yes.
And again on Tuesday night?
Yes.
So I want to skip right to the night of Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Were you here in Kenosha that night?
I was.
Were you live streaming for the Rundown Live?
As well as collecting B-roll, correct.
I'm sorry?
B-roll is footage that you take because you can't stream live because your internet connection is, so it's actually recorded straight to the device.
Do you recall approximately what time you would have arrived in Kenosha that particular day or night?
Yeah, around 8 o'clock, 8:15.
Where did you go once you came to town?
I headed down to the courthouse because that's where things were happening.
And then did you start your live streaming at that point?
I attempted to, but courthouse internet isn't the greatest. So.
We've all learned that lesson. So what did you do then?
I recorded video straight to my cellular device because this way at least I had documentation I could publish later.
Did there come a time in which your internet connection improved?
Yes.
How did you manage to make that happen?
It started to improve when I first started to head towards 59th and Sheridan.
Okay. Do you know what changed that made that better?
Yes. I ran into an interaction between Ryan Balch, I believe, and Gage Groscrews and other people by the courthouse, and I asked if there was more armed individuals because the night before there was a video that went viral of people protecting property, and I felt it would make a different story than getting the same story I had the last 2 days.
And I do want to talk about what you just mentioned, but I think I didn't ask my question very well. You talked about being here and having poor internet by the courthouse, but then it got better when you went down to a different
That is
location.
correct, so I could stream live.
What was it that made the internet better or stronger down there than here? Do you know?
I don't know if it was just I had poor cell phone service or it was just better location. That's the only thing I can think of is that location on my way there it improved. I attempted to go live again, and I was able to.
So is it fair to say that once you were able to go live, you continued to broadcast live throughout most of the rest of the evening?
That is correct, till my battery ran out.
Okay. And did there come a time in which you went to that 59th Street car source location?
Yes,
Okay. And you've been here in the courtroom throughout parts of this trial, is that fair to say?
that is correct.
And you have seen other witnesses testify, such as Mr. Balch and Mr. Lukowski?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And when you were out live streaming that night, you went to that car source location and interacted with those individuals on some level, is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Okay. I want to focus in on a period of time in that evening when there was a dumpster that was pulled out in the road out in front of the 59th Street car source. Do you, I'm going to ask two separate questions. First of all, do you independently remember that happening? Did you also get some video of that?
I did. It was streamed live.
Okay. And then from there, did you continue to remain physically at the 59th Street car source location for several minutes after that?
I did.
And were you in close proximity to either Ryan Balch or the defendant or both of them during those several minutes afterwards?
Probably within 20 feet.
Okay. Could we begin? I'm going to, our TVs are on, if not, I'll turn them on. Could we watch a little bit of your live stream, which has been marked as exhibit number 18, and we're going to go to the 1 hour, 22 minute, and 14 second mark.
It looks like a dumpster that is.
Ask Mr. Harris.
It looks like a dumpster that is in the middle of the street.
And is this a portion of your rundown live stream from the night of August 25th, 2020?
It is.
And would you agree with me that we are looking, you personally recorded this, correct?
Correct.
And this is taken from the 59th Street car source lot looking into Sheridan Road facing east. Would you agree with that?
At this frame, yes.
Okay. Can we please play the video?
And militia are up there.
Everyone calls them militia, so they must be, right?
Where? Oh, dumpster fire?
Yeah, just a dumpster fire. Hey, it's just like the gear, man.
Yeah, right. If 2020 is a blunt, it would be just a fucking stem.
It would just be stem and seed, man.
I could use a doobie right now.
Continue the video for just 1 second, please. Mr. Harris, there are two people in this video that I'm going to point out to you. There's a gentleman here that is a little bit taller gentleman with a beard and some sort of cap on, and there's a woman next to him that appears to have sort of reddish hair. Do you see those two people?
I do.
I'm going to ask two questions. First of all, that night,
I did not.
did you have any idea who those people were?
I did not.
As you see, do you know who those people are?
I believe one of them was the person who shot the fire behind, or the gunshot behind Rosenbaum, and I don't know who the other one is because their back is turned to me.
No dispute, that's Joshua and Kelly Zeminski. So I'll represent to you, sir, that the taller gentleman is Joshua Zeminski, and the woman next to him is Kelly Zeminski. Okay, please continue.
All right, let's. Morning. How's it going? You guys want to fuck around and find out?
Hey. Reel in. Don't cause problems when there's none here. Yeah, that's true. Just stay on your property. Otherwise, there's way too many of them.
There is an individual who is standing on the edge of that frame on the right-hand side there. Do you recognize that person as Gage Grosskreutz?
I do.
Okay, please continue.
Protect your property, not the street! Protect your property, not the street! That's what the fuck
I have to agree with her. They shouldn't be on the street. They're just protecting their property. One of their guys is an asshole.
I know, I thought they were yelling at them. I was like, why? Well, we did get it lit on
One
fire.
of the guys losing his patience. He should go inside.
Yeah, that's what we're about to send him.
Yeah, if you guys could switch him out. Just somebody's a loose cannon. He's got a lot of rage. He says the wrong thing. This whole crowd burns you guys alive.
Yeah.
If you guys could switch him out, just somebody's a loose cannon. He's got a lot of.
There we go. Again, I want the jury to see that in the middle of the screen there is a taller gentleman with his hands in his pockets. That is Joshua Zeminski. And on the TV screen to the left of him with jeans on, that is Kelly Zeminski. All right, please go ahead.
Rage. He says the wrong thing. This whole crowd burns you guys alive. Protect your property. They're respecting that. Just keep it there. He's just trying to protect his property. He doesn't want anything. He has no problem with you guys. He just doesn't want anyone to burn down his shit. I can't blame him. I understand. Hey, your job isn't to be in the street. You guys stay on your property. That's why you got problems already with people. No one bothering your property. Don't look for trouble with anyone. A medic? I know you are, but they got their own medics. If somebody's close by, take care of them. I know you're just trying to make peace.
As this video is playing, we hear your voice speaking to someone in the background. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Who were you speaking to?
I believe that was an interaction with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Do you recall anything about what he was saying to you at that point?
That he was a medic, and that was it, pretty much, that I got from him.
You said at one point they have their own medics. Did you hear that?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I cover a lot of protests, so I become familiar with a lot of the BLM organizations over the summer, especially during the George Floyd marches. So I felt a little bit more comfortable, per se, because I've had more interactions. That's all basically it was.
Sure. But you indicated they have their own medics. What does that mean?
Basically, the medics are, from my understanding, are individuals who volunteer to help out and take care of individuals that were injured, and I've seen them on multiple occasions, 8 individuals that were injured in protests.
Continue.
Yeah, but they don't look at it that way.
He
They look
didn't
at
say
you guys
how you
as
identify those medics or how
It's a different-
anybody's
it's as
supposed
much
to
as you
know
guys
them.
are
Do they? What, do they all wear a little hat with paramedic on it?
I know, but like what a conversation you're having. Before they march down here, I know, but like what a conversation you're having.
So you made a comment there about how they don't look at you that way or something along those lines. What did you mean by that?
A lot of the protesters identified the armed citizens as counter-protesters. They didn't identify them as just protecting their property.
Would it be fair to say that it was your impression that...
That was my impression.
Sure. Would it be fair to say that it was your impression that the people in the crowd viewed the people around Mr. Rittenhouse as a threat?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that there may have been some individuals that had it, but not the majority. I can't speak for everyone. I don't know what they were thinking.
Okay, let's continue, please.
Thanks, guys.
Back away from the business. Back away from the business. Leave the business.
It appears that Mr. Balch and Mr. Lukowski are running towards you yelling gas, gas, gas. Would you agree with me on that?
That is correct.
What was going on?
The Bearcats were rolling down the road, and they began to tear gas and trying to push the crowd past, I believe that's towards 60th, South 60th.
Okay. Have you recently watched this portion of your video?
I have.
And would you agree with me that for a few minutes after this, you are in close proximity with either Ryan Balch, Kyle Rittenhouse, or both of them at the same time?
I don't know for exactly how long, but yes.
Okay. I'm going to have the video played further, but I'm going to have the sound turned off.
Okay.
And then I'll let my colleague know when to stop the video, okay?
So what?
Playing the video, Mr. Harris, are you able to tell the jury where this scene is? Yes, it's the back corner.
Now, while we're playing the video, Mr. Harris, are you able to tell the jury where this scene is?
Yes, it's the back corner of the car lot of Car Source. There's people, or I don't know who it was, but they're throwing rocks up from behind the building.
And where you're at right now in this video are either Mr. Balch or Mr. Rittenhouse near you?
They were probably within 15 feet.
Are there any of the protesters or people on the street or anything like that anywhere near you at this point?
Negative.
Why is that?
They all moved towards what I call the gas station, 60th and Sheridan.
Is that in part because the police had just gassed the entire street?
That would probably be the most likely reason.
And
Why
that
weren't you
dispersed the crowd?
dispersed?
Correct.
Why wasn't everyone else around you dispersed? Why just them?
That's the defendant that just came walking towards you, right?
That is correct.
It looks like at this point the wind is blowing that gas towards you and the other folks that were around the corner there. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Did you have a gas mask on?
I did not.
Did any of them, do you know?
Not that I saw.
Now, if I'm reading the screen here,
Let's pause right here. Mr. Harris, do you see those armored vehicles in the street?
Sure do.
Now, if I'm reading the screen here correctly,
have you watched this video?
your video file here has about 24 minutes left to play. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate.
And have you watched this video recently?
Yes.
Does this video end around the time that Mr. Rosenbaum, the defendant, shoots the people?
Yes, within a few minutes after that. Battery ran out.
So would it be fair to say that at this moment in the video, the shootings are going to be in roughly 20 minutes or thereabouts after this?
Roughly, yes.
I see that the Bearcats and whatnot are on the road at this point in front of the 59th Street car source. Do you know where they traveled after this?
They traveled more forward towards 60th Street, I believe, and then they stopped there.
Did they establish a line keeping the protesters south of 60th at that point?
With the MRAPs, or Bearcats, yes.
So, is it fair to say, Mr. Harris, that for the remainder of your video, as far as you know, no protesters came back to 59th Street car source after this?
Not that I witnessed.
Two questions. First of all, do you independently remember at any point in the sequence of events that we've just seen, starting with that dumpster fire and all the way forward here, do you remember ever seeing Joseph Rosenbaum?
I do not.
After rewatching your
What's
video,
your point?
Is Mr. Rosenbaum in this video
Oh, wait
at
a
any
minute.
point during
Don't
the
you have
series
a
that we
cross?
just watched?
No, not that
Hey,
I can
whoa,
see.
whoa, whoa.
I have nothing further.
He was like, I'm out of here. I told my lies. I'm done. Really? What does it matter whether he saw him or not? Are they trying to say he wasn't following? It was
No, that's right.
happenstance. He wasn't stalking. I'm not sure what the point is, other than maybe just to plant the seed that, you know, whatever, Robo Butt was a nice guy.
First time. Mr. Harris, on the video, you describe
First time.
correct. Point at the
Mr. Harris, on the video, you describe people as militia, right?
Correct.
Point up at the roof and say there's militia members up there,
that is correct.
right?
That is correct.
That's your
Now,
opinion. You didn't talk to any of them about. I think it this way. You had no information that Mr. Rittenhouse was in any type of militia, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would have explored
Now,
further. Did anybody identify as militia?
You at some
No.
point
Did
say to
anybody
him,
tell
you
you they
believe that-
belonged to a militia? No. Did you ask anybody if they were militia? No. I would have driven that point home instead of letting them off easy. Again, these attorneys are making points and they think it's clear, but it's not clear to the jury, I don't think.
Did you say? Well, I strike that. At first, you say this whole crowd could burn you guys alive.
And you say,
That is correct. Why'd you say
well,
that?
I strike that. At first, you say
Was it getting escalated?
this whole crowd could burn you guys alive if
And
you say the wrong
that
thing.
was in part.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And why'd you say that?
I wanted to de-escalate the situation.
Was it getting escalated?
Yes.
And
No, did you-
that was in
Anger the
part because
protesters.
the
It didn't
dumpster was
anger
put
the
out.
people
The fire
who were
dumpster was put out?
destroying
That is correct. It
property
angered,
and lighting
the
fires and
protesters.
looting and
Now, did you-
burning. It disturbed the protesters. Oh, okay, I got it.
You see things that were going on that night that would be outside the realm of protesting, but more along the lines of rioting.
I would agree with that term, yes.
So you saw.
You see things that were going on that night that would be outside the realm of protesting, but more along the lines of rioting.
I would agree with that term, yes.
So you saw, you had mentioned it, and we'll talk about it. Rocks were being thrown at people, right?
I didn't witness that.
Well, you saw people throwing rocks on the roof.
Oh, okay, well, fair enough.
There's
I
people
didn't.
on the roof.
I was told that by people on the roof that they were throwing rocks.
You didn't see it.
I did not see that. No.
Were you aware that there were homemade gas bombs being thrown?
One of the people on the roof did say that there was a homemade gas bomb.
Ammonia
Basically,
bleach is
I don't want to go
known as mustard
bleach,
gas,
I don't know
and
how they
it
do
does
that, but
serious
that's what they claim.
damage to the lungs.
And
it's
you had
not
said
just
to
tear gas.
Mr. Rittenhouse.
I know you're just trying to make peace. Right? Correct. Okay, so to be fair, he wasn't doing anything aggressive. Correct.
I agree with that.
He wasn't verbally.
I know you're just trying to make peace. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so to be fair, he wasn't doing anything aggressively, correct?
I agree with that.
He wasn't verbally threatening anyone.
No, he was offering help.
He wasn't using his firearm in a way to scare or intimidate people by pointing it at them. Agreed?
There are people throwing
Agreed.
at people on the roof, right? Correct. So
When you
Do you see Mr.
you said, I
Rittenhouse
think you said on
go
the video
after
at one point, there are people throwing rocks at people on the roof, right?
Correct.
people on the roof are
So-
probably in direct danger.
Do you see Mr. Rittenhouse go after those people in the direction of where they're throwing the rocks and chase them?
No.
So people on the roof are arguably in direct danger because did you ever see the rocks?
I did see the rubble and people throwing rocks at the Bearcats, but
Right, so
it's
to-
concrete.
Knowing that, you didn't
So
see
they weren't really throwing what you and I might see like rocks on a beach. We're talking about clumps of concrete that they're smashing, picking up, and then throwing at people, right?
Correct.
And knowing that, you didn't see Mr. Rittenhouse go after those people who were actually causing danger to others, right?
No, I did not.
Did you have contact with the owners of that car source that night or the next day?
Not those 2 days, but I did see him pull up, I think, later on in that week.
The two brother, if you know.
I don't know. All I know is that whoever the owners were, they pulled up, and I briefly walked by and said something to him. I don't recall.
Mr. Harris, the people that you saw.
Mr. Harris, I appreciate your time.
Was the defendant
Mr. Harris, the
dressed the same as them?
people that you saw at 59th Street Car Source that you characterized as the militia,
Shirt, correct? Lime green, army green. He had a
Was the
weapon
defendant
slung around his
dressed
neck,
the same as them?
correct?
No, he was not.
It was the same type of weapon.
He had on
as the rest of those folks, correct?
sort of an army green colored shirt, correct?
Lime green, army
He
green.
was
He had a weapon slung
Come
around
on,
him like
dude!
that, correct?
Correct.
It was the same type of weapon as the rest of those folks, correct?
I'm not really good with guns, but it seemed to be so.
And he was acting
He was
the same as they were, wasn't he? For the most part, yes. You were asked about who escalated
in the same group with these guys.
He's
that
got
you
to
felt
come
emotion
back
was,
now
That is correct.
and say,
And he was acting
where did
the same
this
as they were,
term
wasn't he?
militia come from?
For the
Did
most part, yes.
anybody identify
You were asked
or
about who
say
escalated things. Can we?
that they were militia?
Exhibit 18 at the 1 hour and 22 minute and 30 second mark, please.
The other
Exhibit
way they
18
can come
at
back
the
on the
1
defense
hour
is to
and
say,
22 minute and 30 second
you
mark,
said they
please.
were dressed alike, but did the defendant have on a bulletproof vest? No. Did he have on camouflage? No. Did he have on a mask or something wrapped around his neck? No. He needs to clear that up somehow and get that damn militia word defined, that these guys just see him as that and they make it up. Nobody identifies as a militia.
If 2020 is a blunt, it would be just a fucking stem. I could use a doobie right now. If 2020 is a
Are
blunt,
they
it would
yelling
be just a
left?
fucking
Go,
stem.
Brandon? In the background?
I could use a doobie right now. Alright, let's...
Fuck around and find out, right? Immediately after that, you...
How's it going? You guys want to fuck around and find out? Hey.
Because he was escalating it, wasn't it?
You guys
By
want
what he was saying.
to fuck around and find out, right?
You guys want to fuck around and find
Immediately
out.
after that, you basically scold that guy, don't
towards the
you?
other people?
I believe, well, whatever you want to call it, I tried to de-escalate the situation.
And that guy's
Because he was escalating it,
That is
wasn't
correct.
he? By what he was saying.
Yes.
You guys want to fuck around and find out. Did you interpret that as a threat towards the other people?
I didn't really think about it, but I could see how it could be interpreted that way.
And that guy's wearing an AR-15, isn't he?
Probably, yes.
In fact, that same guy went around back, and when those people were behind the place throwing rocks, he said to you he was going to take his gun and start shooting rounds through the fence at them, didn't he?
I don't recall agreeing
That's
with that.
what I was about to
Can we go
say. I was
forward on
like,
video two
why
about-
don't we care what someone else did? Rittenhouse
Go to
didn't
about
do that.
one-
Who gives a shit what someone else?
Nothing to do with this.
What? You're going to charge every black person because one black person threw a rock? Really?
Who's relevant to this? There were questions about what the response was to people throwing rocks of the group.
The group is not on trial. Mr. Rittenhouse is on trial.
That's fine. I'll leave it. Thank you.
What is the relevance of this?
There were
He just
questions
got
about,
schooled. Oh, that's fine. That's all right.
response was
I'll
to
leave
people
it.
throwing rocks?
He already got it out, though. He got what he wanted. One of
group-
those mean
the group is
militia
on trial.
guys with a gun
Mr. Rittenhouse is on
said that he was going to shoot. Even though nobody agreed with it, it's called ringing a bell that can't be unrung. He should have the judge, even though it wouldn't help, instruct the jury to disregard the DA's statement and the questioning that happened and that related to it or any statements connected to it. That's bullshit. This DA just pulled a sleazy trick and got the jury to hear that one of those militia members hanging out with Kyle said he was going to go shoot up everybody, and that was threatening. And none of it happened. Total bullshit.
The person that was yelling on that, that's not Mr. Rittenhouse, right?
That is correct.
Nothing else.
Let me step down, sir. We're on a break. Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case. Read what.
Okay, so the state just called a detective
That's not
Ben
Mr. Rittenhouse,
something.
right?
That is correct.
Nothing
Here
else.
comes a detective.
Wait, let me step down, sir. We're on a break. Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case. Read what.
Duringen, A-N-T-A-R-A-M-I-A-N. Where are you currently employed? I'm a detective with the city commission. How long have you been with the commission police force? 10 years.
What is it with Kenosha? They all got freaking their hair up straight up in a row right here. Is that like a Kenosha thing?
M-I-A-N.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm a detective with the City Kenosha Police Department.
How long have you been with the
Do you
Kenosha Police
recall
Department?
what your
10
assignment
years.
was on the evening of August 25th, 2020? We were in a modified role where traditionally we're investigators.
There's some change now.
And how long have you been a detective?
About 3.5 years.
And do you recall what your assignment was on the evening of August 25th, 2020?
We were in a modified role where traditionally we're investigators. We were initially assigned at the beginning of the shift to go to local gas stations and ensure their pumps were turned off to prevent further fires that night.
When you say we, who's the we?
Detective Howard and I believe Detective Valeri was also with us.
Translated,
Is
we
that
were hanging
Detective
around
Randy
getting
Valeri?
overtime, just watching people get
And so,
stupid
other
till
than
we,
going to the gas
you
stations,
know,
did you
had
have
to
any
do
other
something.
assignments that evening?
We were just assisting in general patrol. Any areas that needed help, we'd respond over and just see what they needed. People who were being
Jacob Blake, there was a lot of unrest in Kenosha that continued on Monday night. What was the law enforcement response?
taken into custody to assist with that as well.
For Tuesday night?
Now, I think we're all aware that beginning on Sunday night, August 23rd, after the shooting of Jacob Blake, there was a lot of unrest in Kenosha that continued on Monday night. What was the law enforcement response and planning and whatnot for Tuesday night, if you know?
By Tuesday night, and this comes from, I wasn't directly involved in the planning, obviously, that's way above my position, but generically speaking, by Tuesday night we had multiple agencies that responded. The National Guard had arrived, so we had multiple, we call them pieces of armor, but Bearcats and MRAPs that were available to us. So by then there was a more organized response. We had active patrol assignments, we had dedicated areas of responsibility. We were able to respond more effectively
he's gotta
to
kiss everybody's
the bigger
ass.
calls that Monday and Sunday we were able to respond to, but not as appropriately as we normally would.
And if you would please slow down a little bit for a court reporter.
Apologies.
The most important person in the room. Well, except for the judge, of course.
Some sort of report, 911 call in some other part of Kenosha other than this downtown area? Was the Kenosha Police Department
So, Detective, if there were situations that Tuesday night where there was some sort of report or 911 call in some other part of Kenosha other than this downtown area, was the Kenosha Police Department equipped to handle those types of calls?
Absolutely.
I want to focus in on the downtown area, and there's that map that we've all been referring to. What was the logistical, the strategic plan, I guess, the tactical plan for handling any issues that arose in that area, the downtown area, on that particular night, if you know?
Again, speaking more generically, as it's not my pay grade, but we had dedicated SWAT teams along with, we call them CEDAR, but
Wow,
it's a
government
team.
was really
We had dedicated
good.
units that were assigned to respond to specific calls. So if there was a fire, we'd have a dedicated SWAT team or a SWAT response along with a riot team to ensure that whatever problem we had could be properly handled.
Is it fair to say that during a part of that evening there was also a large number of police officers that were here outside the courthouse?
Correct.
The other units that you've just described, were they separate from the people that were out in front of the courthouse?
Yes, those were auxiliary personnel.
And you mentioned if there was a fire. So, for example, if the 59th Street car source or the 63rd Street car source had a structure fire or a house fire along in one of those areas or something like that, was there enough resources in law enforcement to respond to something like that?
To the best of my knowledge, there were, yes.
What about if there were smashed out car windows? Was that something that the law enforcement was going to come in and respond to?
No, unless it was a threat to life, we weren't going to be going at that point.
Is it fair to say that
Meaning
the
the pesky
response depended
citizens
the
were on
type
their
of
own, and
crime, the type of report
that's why
that
everybody
needed
had
to be
guns,
handled?
because
Correct.
the government
So
sold
if it was
them
just
out
property
like they
damage,
do every
like broken
time,
windows or,
and they stayed out where it
something
was
like that,
safe.
was that something that police were going to respond to?
Not at that time, no, not emergent.
What if it
violence incident, something like that? Were there enough resources that night for the police to come in and respond as quickly as possible? Correct, there were. We've heard a lot of testimony in this case about the defense
were a
shooting
threat to
people.
life, such as a house fire or a shooting or a serious violence incident, something like that. Were there enough resources that night for the police to come in and respond as quickly as possible?
Correct.
Oh my God! Here we go.
We've heard a lot of testimony in this case about the defendant shooting people that night. I want to put that aside. Other than that, was anyone else killed here in Kenosha as
And
part of all
that
these
is
protests,
relevant
riots,
how?
civil unrest, whatever you want to
So you could pick any
Call it
night in a week.
on the night
A
of
lot
August
of
25th.
people get killed. Does that make it worse?
Was anyone
or
else
less?
seriously
What?
injured?
To the
What
best
does
of my
that
knowledge,
matter? Other than to confuse and make the jury think that this was a really just out of the way, extreme violent. Everything else was calm and everybody was safe in the city.
You've described a little bit of your personal assignments that evening. Did there come a time in which your responsibility changed? Yes, there was a time when that changed. Tell us about that. So around 23:49, 11:49 p.m. Calls for shots fired in the area.
You've described a little bit of your personal assignments that evening. Did there come a time in which your responsibility changed?
Yes, there was a time when that changed.
Tell us about that.
So around 23:49, 11:49 p.m., there were multiple calls for shots fired in the area of 63rd Street and Sheridan Road. Initially, officers were, they believed to be chasing the involved parties who were involved in the shooting, west and south. So there's the off-screen, but there's a minimum security prison closer to 65th and 14th. The foot pursuits had generally gone that way. So we were tasked with assisting with the perimeter that was established to try and catch those people.
Unrelated shootings.
I want to stop you for a second because I believe you mentioned there was a report of a shooting at 63rd and Car Source. Is that right?
Correct.
63rd and Sheridan, which is the car source, right? And we now know that's the killing of Joseph Rosenbaum. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Other than that, did Kenosha police respond to other unrelated shootings in that area at that same time?
Yes, so as that unfolded, we received more reports for shots fired, and as you see in the videos and heard, it continued. But essentially there was what was believed to be an exchange of gunfire in, I believe it's Main Park, which is just west of the car source location at 6226 Sheridan Road.
Can you use that laser pointer and point out that park that you just described? Okay. And what is the name of that park?
I believe it's Main Park.
And that's basically located between 10th and 11th Avenues and 62nd and 63rd Street. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
And do you know whether or not there actually was any sort of shooting over there?
There were shots fired. In terms of someone hurt, we never received reports of anyone injured by gunfire in that area.
Do you know whether or not that had anything to do with the events in this case?
I do not believe it had anything to do with this case.
Is it fair to say, though, that while there was a need for a response to the shooting of Joseph Rosenbaum, other law enforcement resources were also trying to deal with that other incident simultaneously?
Correct. There were multiple squads. I believe there's actually a piece of armor that was utilized. There's like a daycare just behind the car source, and there were reports that a shooter had run into there. So I mean, there's a large amount of police personnel in that area.
fair to say that
Now, you
since
mentioned
then,
that at some point in the evening your
responsibilities
responsibilities changed, and I know you were talking about the 63rd
Do
and
you
Sheridan
recall
shooting.
when it was
Did there
that
come a
you
time in which
learned
you,
that,
as a detective, were assigned to handle that investigation?
done those shootings? Was
Shortly after midnight,
Rittenhouse?
I was given the news that I'd be the lead investigator assigned to this along with Detective Howard.
And is it fair to say that since then you two have been the primary investigators in this case?
Correct.
To meet with him.
Do you recall
Did you
when it
learn
was that
how
you
old
learned
was
that
the
the person who had done those shootings was the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse?
And his date of birth was
Within a few
January
hours, we were
3rd,
aware that it was
2003,
Kyle Rittenhouse.
correct?
Did there come a time in which you and Detective Howard went down to the Antioch Police Department to meet with
As
him?
part of your
Yes.
investigation,
Did you determine how old
take,
Mr. Rittenhouse was
possession
on that
of
particular
the
day?
firearm that was involved
Yes, on the night of
in
August
the
25th, 2020, he was 17 years old.
And his date of birth is January 3rd, 2003. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I have, hold up that firearm.
As part of your investigation, did you take possession of the firearm that was involved, that the defendant used to shoot Mr. Rosenbaum, Mr. Huber, and Mr. Grosskreutz?
Yes, I took possession of it down in Antioch, Illinois, at their police department.
And I have. Could you
Look at all
hold
the
that
cameras. Oh my
firearm?
goodness, a gun, a gun, look!
Is that the weapon that Mr. Rittenhouse used to shoot Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, 2020? Yes, sir. And is it in substantially the same
Or
condition
hold up
as
and
it was
a weapon
when
that has been marked as
possessed
exhibit
of
number 28. You don't need to bring it to him, just if you show it to him. Do you recognize that, Detective Andremian?
Yeah, that's the firearm in question.
Is that the weapon that Mr. Rittenhouse used to shoot Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, 2020?
Yes, sir.
And is it in substantially the same condition as it was when you took possession of it?
Yeah, that I'm calling it an optic, but the sight that was separated from it, when I took possession of it, that was still attached. I had to remove it so we could fit it into one of those gun boxes.
weapon
Detective
that
Howard, could you hold that one more time, please? I'm sorry.
Did it have that strap attached?
Making
to
you use
the
a lot of
butt
gloves here. I
when you
apologize.
took possession of it? Yeah. If any, did you do to determine whether or not that was actually the weapon used?
If you could just hold that up so the jury can see it, please. Right there is fine. Thank you. Detective Antaramian, did the weapon that we are looking at here, did it have that strap attached to the butt when you took possession of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. If any, did you do to determine whether or not that was actually the weapon used in these shootings?
So later on after that night, I believe it was the 28th, we had the weapon taken to what's called a NIBIN facility down in Chicago. NIBIN. I couldn't tell you exactly what the acronym stands for, but they test ballistics.
Can you bring that microphone really close so we can hear
Yeah,
it?
sorry about that.
That's okay.
So we took it to a NIBIN. Essentially, it was a trailer that the ATF had established down in Chicago. So we took it down there and handed it over to the NIBIN technicians, who subsequently test-fired the firearm, and they were able to correlate that the casings we had recovered at that time, it was 6 casings, did in fact come from that firearm.
And I think there's been some testimony that maybe the next day on the 29th, there were 2 more casings that you found, or Detective Howard found, for a total 8.
Correct.
And those 8 spent shell casings were also given to Heather Williams, who testified earlier at the crime lab, to verify that information as well. Is that right?
Correct. So NIBIN typically won't give you a final report. They'll give you what they believe to be accurate, but then the crime lab has to actually confirm that information.
So then you had Heather Williams at the crime lab verify that the shell casings, the 8 shell casings, came from the defendant's gun. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Prior to having the defendant's gun brought to NIBIN or the crime lab, was the swabbing done to see if there's DNA on the gun?
Yes, the firearm was turned over to an evidence technician who performed the standard evidentiary DNA swabs they take from the firearm.
And that was Officer Jeff Van Wheat?
Correct.
Is it possible for additional DNA testing to be done on an item in a case, a gun, a phone, any sort of physical item later on in the case?
Yes.
After that initial swabbing was done, did you ever receive a request from the defendant or his attorneys to have additional DNA testing done on the gun?
To have additional swabs done on any
Bird
No.
I'm sorry.
Bird shifting.
Rephrase your question.
I'll ask it this way, Detective Antaramian. After the first swabs were
Notice
done by
nobody
Officer
has
Van
still
Wheat,
swabbed the gun out of
did you
all
ever
this.
receive a
At any
request
time, they could have
from
went and
anyone
swabbed it.
to have additional swabs done on any part of that gun?
No.
If you had received such a request, would you have followed through with that?
Yes.
What is the exhibit sticker on there?
We've heard some testimony about an item that was recovered from Mr. Grosskreutz. Detective Howard, if you could locate that for us, please.
What it is? So, I'm not an expert on this, but those are devices used by both our SWAT team and our Cedar or riot teams.
What is the exhibit sticker on there?
Typically referred to as gas bomb.
61. This is an item which has already been introduced into evidence as exhibit number 61. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what it is?
That is used by law enforcement?
So, and I'm not an expert on this, but those are devices used by both our SWAT team and then our Cedar or riot teams. They're typically referred to as like a gas bomb, if you will, in layman's terms, but it's like a nerve gas, non-lethal that is used to disperse crowds.
Is this a device that is used by law enforcement?
Yeah, some people also call it tear gas.
Is this a device that a common layperson could create on their own at home?
No, I don't believe so.
Is this device, when it was recovered from Mr. Grosskreutz, had it already been used? Was it no longer capable of emitting any gas?
Based off my observations, it was already spent.
Work to acquire video that was recorded.
Could we please have exhibit number 10 pulled up?
And do you recognize the video that's up on the screen?
I'm going to go ahead and pause it because it looks like he's going to be a while since he's a detective. So
Now, Detective,
I'll
as part
start
of the
another one.
investigation in this case,